Hello, my name is Kathleen Egan. Thank you for joining me on a discussion concerning ethics in healthcare management. First, I'd like to introduce you to my background. I've been working in managerial roles in professional organizations for well over 25 years. During many years working in this professional capacity, I found that each professional organization I encounter has established rules of ethical conduct for its professionals in order to guide in making decisions related to ethical considerations. There also exist boards to determine what constitutes ethical behavior. The boards may exist at the state level or in some cases at the national level. A few of these governing boards include, for law firms, the Board of Bar Overseers; for engineering, the National Society of Professional Engineers; for accounting, the Board of Accountancy; for project management, the Project Management Institute Board of Directors; and of course, we must also consider the healthcare providers who take the Hippocratic Oath. So let us begin by defining what ethical is. It's a system of moral principles, perhaps something ingrained at birth or learned through social interaction. There are many schools of thought and discussions concerning this topic in psychology, and which are beyond the scope of this discussion, and no doubt would be a discussion unto itself. The rules or standards governing the conduct by which we live, again, this might be the cultural or societal influence mandated by government bodies. Also, rules for distinguishing between right and wrong. Again, this is a moral judgment which may be personal and/or professional within the context of interpretation. It's also important to note that ethics aren't stagnant. They change and evolve in a manner which the business community and the world business leaders are changing and evolving. We're seeing an emergence on the global stage and in variations in professional practices that we possibly never saw before. Education, knowledge, and understanding are critical as we move ahead. Next, let us discuss the question of what is unethical conduct. Broadly defined, it's a behavior that falls outside what is considered morally right or proper within a society or culture. In business, it's the unwillingness to adhere to proper rules of conduct, or simply put, not obeying the rules and regulations of conduct within that profession. In the legal profession, a field that I'm very familiar with, this is established by statutory rules and regulations and further defined and guided by the Board of Bar Overseers. In accounting, a field which I'm currently participating, this is defined by the Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, or GAAP, which are also the Code of Accounting Ethics. In project management, this is defined by violations of the rules established by the Project Management Institute under its Code of Ethics. So let us move next to penalties imposed by unethical conduct. First, sanctions and legal actions. When companies are informed of violations, whether due to legal or political violations, these types of violations will ultimately result in sanctions or lawsuits. Initially, they are borne by the organization, but ultimately become borne upon the perpetrator. Next is civil or criminal fines and penalties. These are most obvious. If you break the law, you pay for it, and if your organization is found in violation, you will ultimately bear the dishonor of the violation and perhaps also face legal action if directly a result of your conduct. Next, loss of license and certification. Violation of ethical conduct in any profession will result in loss of license and certification granted by that professional organization. Again, another career-ending event. So how does a professional ensure they will not violate the rules of ethics? Next, we look to the guidelines established by the Project Management Institute, which are codes that guide ethics in project management and therefore establish guidelines in the areas of, first, responsibility, by accepting accountability and ownership of a project and all the required components. Second, respect, earning as well as conveying respect of project team members, as well as sponsors and stakeholders. Third, fairness, treating all stakeholders and project team members on an even playing field, just as you would expect in return. Fourth, honesty, demonstrated in communication, disclosure, and most important, transparency. And to this list, I've also added trust, which must be inspired by leadership, communication, and actions in order to be achieved. Next, I'll discuss issues a project manager must consider and be held accountable to during the course of the project. The first is transparency issues, which relate to the reluctance of the manager to report actual performance or lack of performance. Relationship issues, inappropriate interpersonal or informal relationships between managers of the project and other stakeholders or team members, such as clients and suppliers. Third, optimization issues. The question of optimizing the project to meet the objectives of the sponsor or client, the manager of the project or other stakeholders, together with associated risks and benefits. Next, we look to examples of ethic violations to avoid. The first is obvious, receiving inappropriate entertainment and/or gifts. Everyone likes presents. Wow, this is a very serious infringement on ethical violation. Even offered a box seat at a sporting event by a potential vendor. Next, conflict of interest with vendors and suppliers. A project manager might have a personal interest with or perhaps a financial gain due to a prior relationship. Next is lacking due diligence and due care. And this is demonstrated in not doing proper research to understand the best feasible option. Also, a few others are massaging feedback, which is making the obvious less obvious to appear more favorable in the eyes of management and stakeholders. Also, unequal access to key information and other resources, or limiting access to information and resources. Engaging in illicit activities. Obviously, this would be under the category of illegal behavior. Also, not reporting unethical behavior. It should be noted that when this is acknowledged, it should also be reported. Next, revealing privileged information, which is a blatant violation of security considerations. Next, not confronting problems on failure to act or ignoring potential problems or setbacks. Deception, which is also a blatant violation of the truth, is considered something worth disclosing or something that cannot be validated. And also deliberately attempting to damage company reputation and product image. This is an obvious mistrust and violation. Next, let us consider the 5 steps to ethical decision-making process, which is defined by the Ethical Decision-Making Framework, or EDMF. First, assessment. First, we would ask our question, does it align with your ethical values and those of the surrounding culture? And then, do you understand the ethical dilemma, and is the organization aware of such violation? Also, what corrective actions are available, and what risks and decisions will the organization be willing to accept? Alternatives. The question would be, have you considered alternatives and choices, whether they are pro or con? Do you have an alternate to resolution without harming the project and therefore willing to take the risk to end your career for the sake of the project? Next, analysis. It's time to research and make decisions and alternatives, and to also test whether these are viable solutions. Ultimately, looking back, will the decision seem like a good idea a year from now? Application. Would your choice treat others as you would like to be treated? Consult the professional organization for guidance if necessary. Team members and stakeholders may be affected by actions that you don't do or do not take. And finally, action. Take the necessary steps after the decision is made whether to proceed with a course of action or to change course for the good of the organization. Ultimately, will you feel good about your decision? I've abstracted a few questions from the project management professional exam to ponder, and please give your thought to the following, which are contained within the ethical module. The software company where you are project manager is attempting to make a sale with a large manufacturing company. The sales team has learned that a competing company where you had worked previously is trying to get the same business. The sales team is asking you to provide confidential information about your employer's products and corporate operations in an attempt to get an edge up on the competition. What would you do? Also, another question would be, you have been asked by a relative to submit his resume for a job opening at the company where you work as a project manager. You know, this position will be utilized as a resource for your project. What would you do? And finally, while you've been preoccupied dealing with various cost overruns for the past week, a critical path item did not start on time and you were not informed until several days later. What would you tell your project stakeholders? And in conclusion, project management organizations such as Project Management Institute provide resources and directives to guide project management professionals in making ethical choices and decisions, as well as to avoid ethical violations. Thank you for viewing.